Trader, and this is your market wrap for March 4th, 2019. We have just a little over 10 minutes left, and Qs are trying to make their way back to unchanged, recovered from that morning sell-off here. SPY still down just shy of 0.5% there. Okay, you see it's still making its way back up higher. So there's kind of a lot going on here, even though this is going to change or going to close not that different from Friday's close. I thought what we got today was a good amount of movement. You can see the range here today was a lot wider than what we've been getting. So I think today seems deceptively simple just because the Qs are going to be unchanged and SPY just down 0.5%. But let's go through it. Market gapped up. We did come into today bullish based on the daily, the hourly, right? We were bullish on the short term and the long term. We got the gap up, right? And then the gap up got sold. So that was the part that started to become more interesting because we broke through various levels of support, primarily this one right here around 173.20. Okay, so that was the pivot that we were using, that if this breaks, we now have to shift to a short-term neutral bias. Okay, the long-term bias is not going to be in question until we take out this right here. Okay, that's going to be 171.76 on the Qs, and we got through it on the SPY. Okay, so that selling that we got today was the most bearish sell-off that we've seen, even though it was only part of the day here was not sustained, right? And especially the Qs had a very nice recovery, right? This is one of the more bearish sell-offs that we've seen, at least in a half-day sell-off, right? As we kind of bottomed into lunch there. So what does the pattern look like? So what we've been watching here to determine our bias has been primarily the hourly, because the daily has been this grind here. We've been making higher lows and higher highs. So if this is going to break, we'll see it break first on the hourly. And then if we zoom out even more, right, the weekly has just been making higher highs, higher lows, right? No previous candle's been broken, right, through this run up. So they don't really give us that much information as far as the strength of the bulls and the strength of the bears, because we don't see as much back and forth. Okay, so the hourly is the one that we are going to look for some kind of downtrend first to expect the daily and weekly to give us some kind of sell-off. Okay, so what we're looking for here on the hourly now is that we got the sell-off, we broke through some support, right? And now we're looking at an hourly sell setup. Okay, so this is the pattern I want to bring your attention to, is this hourly sell setup. Okay, the more that we move up, the more likely that the hourly sell setup is going to fail. Okay, so I'll give you an example here, which we went over last week, right? So we had this gap down, right? It got some follow through after the open for the first hour or so, and we had broken the hourly uptrend, right? Here was the previous low, and then we broke below it, right? We even broke below this bottoming tail here, which also was a pivot. So we got instead this grind higher, and in fact retraced the gap almost entirely there, and then it triggered the sell setup, which is after a series of higher lows in the context of a downtrend, we triggered the sell setup. What happened to the sell setup, right? It got retested and then broke, and then price went higher. Okay, so you can see from here, this is where the sell-off started, and we got 100+% retracement. So the more that this retraces, the more likely that this sell setup is going to fail, and then we're just going to get more of the same, okay, of what we've gotten so far in 2019. Okay, so it doesn't look like, yeah, we only have 7 minutes, that sell setup is going to trigger today. Could trigger tomorrow, could be a gap down, could be a sell-off. Right now, we're going to be looking at 173.80 on the Qs and 278.60 on the SPY as aggressive entry points to initiate a short-term bearish bias. Okay, and then we'll get back to this area of support, which would be today's low, and then we'll see if we get another setup from there or if it kind of accelerates, and we'll see how it gets there. Okay, so that's the pattern that we have, and that's what I'll be watching going into tomorrow. Okay, we have an hourly sell setup. this level of retracement, 40 to 60%, is a good amount of retracement, right? That's pretty healthy. That's good. But the more, if tomorrow we continue to creep up, we get closer to today's high or open, and then we kind of trigger ourselves that it's probably not going to get going right away, if at all, which is kind of what we got here, which got retested, right? And then failed once we got this gap up. Okay. So, you know, it would be more exciting if we just, you know, said this was the top, but based on the pattern that we're getting, you know, that unfortunately is just a little bit on the aggressive side. Now, what would be the less aggressive approach, right, is first, I think the earliest sign we can get is this hourly sell setup to trigger. And then if we can get under last week's lows, right, then the daily will actually be damaged. So we'll have actually an hourly downtrend and a broken uptrend on the daily. Okay. So we'll just have to wait and see. We know what those price levels are. We know what the pattern is, right? Now, I know some people may go for more of a probability approach after, you know, 3, 4, 5, 6, however many weekly bars in a row that move higher. It's supposed to come in, you know, and it makes a lot of sense. But I am a pattern trader because I think timing is that important. You know, like after 3 weekly bars in a row, which you don't see a lot on this chart, and we're only looking back like 6 months or so. But if you just use that and say you go short here, right, who knows how many weeks, and obviously many weeks based on the results that we got, that you could be looking at a losing position, or even, you know, taking a position, you know, that, you know, stops out or whatever, and then, you know, miss the move. So, you know, that's why the pattern is there. It's not that every pattern has to follow through, or there is a pattern that is 100%, right? It's to help us determine our timing, determine our risk, right? So that's what we're looking at. Hourly sell setup on the Qs and SPY, right? Aggressive point to enter into a bearish bias, right? But at the very least, once we trigger that sell setup, we will no longer be bullish on the Qs and SPY, okay, for the short term. We'll see what we get tomorrow, okay? So it'll be good that we have this pattern to work with, because, you know, some days it's just a lot more sideways, you know, like the opening range determines what we're going to do, and then we don't get much. So we're actually getting some movement, which is good. All right, so let's take a look at some of today's plays here. I had a call on this ST in E. Was a gap up, not the best gap up. I think this one, yeah, I found it later. Was not initially on our list for the morning. And then once I ran the scanner, came across this STNE, which was gapping up. And by the time I found it, was actually already pulled back here and doing this buy setup here. So there you can see it on the 1 minute, a bit of a transition out of that sell off there off the highs. And then on the 2 minute, we had a bit of a base here. And then on the 5 minute, we had a breakout. Or sorry, that was the breakout. On the 5 minute, we had a bit of a pullback. Okay, so that's just the opposite of a sell setup is a buy setup. That's a series of lower highs in the context of an uptrend, right? So this gapped up, showed strength, and now we are looking at this higher low, okay, as continuation. Okay, so over this topping tail, this is a secondary entry because the bicep technically triggered here, 33.50. I gave it to this bar here and gave it a little bit of room, so 33.05, because there's some spread. This isn't one I've traded before. It was a little bit spready. So 33.50 by 33.05. We were initially looking for 34.40, but as we started to creep up here, I did have to change the targets because it was starting to struggle a little bit on its move up there. So we did change the targets to 33.15. Let me pull up the image there for the ST&E. So we did give it new targets there. It was starting to struggle a bit, and market was really, really weak. Well, I wanted to stick with it, and we did hold that back half all the till when it started to come in. So we were able to get some out here at 34.18. Once it got up there, I think it was like 34.25 or so on the ask, and yeah, 34.18 on the bid. I said just take it. So 34.18, and then came back in. We trailed it up here to the bottom of the base and eventually took that out. So this strength ended up not holding up. Still a small winner, but kind of had bigger expectations for this. I think the daily was extended, but I thought the entry was kind of perfect. It was perfectly in line with what I was looking for. Here you go. We'll take a look at the market. So you can see this started to come in kind of right before lunch there, 20 minutes before 12 o'clock. And the Qs, on the other hand, right from the get-go, right, had a 15-minute run-up, and then from there started to make lower lows and lower highs, right, by definition, a downtrend there. So very, very weak, but I like the relative strength on the ST&E. Now, the relative strength, I thought, provided some of the best opportunities from this morning. Someone in the room actually found this ZTO. So you saw what the Qs looked like, right? Selling off, and look at this ZTO. Cannot come off the highs. So this is the best example of relative strength that we have today, right? In the morning, market selling off. This is basing at the highs. So you want to play it long on a breakout. So really nice job to the person that found this in the room. I know he played it as well. Also, other members played it, right? So really, really good stuff. Right, so that I'm always really happy to see. You know, by no means are room members expected to make these kind of contributions, but you know, that's just really fantastic and such a good example of relative strength. You know, so it's stuff like that that really stands out, because a lot of stuff that you find is going to look a lot like the market. It's going to be weak. It's going to be doing various kind of power trends lower, much like the Qs and the SPY were. Right. But that's why we go over the education. That's why we go over the concepts. We go over the patterns. Right. So it's not just, you know, me saying, you know, just do what I say and put in the numbers that I say, but we go over it so that, right, you know, you can really build your own toolbox, right, and become self-sufficient. And so, you know, that's the reason that we're on the mic pretty much from open to close, go over questions, go over the ideas, go over the concepts, you know. So I thought there was some pretty nice stuff today, but still a Monday. So I thought it was pretty quiet. Hopefully we'll get some better gaps and some better plays the rest of the week. I didn't think it was there was all that much to do. But the Qs and SPY are moving. So at least we have some interesting stuff going on here. So I was wondering if we would maybe get this hourly sell set up to close or to trigger before the close, but it didn't. So we'll have to see if we get this hourly sell, so a break of a previous bar's hourly low in the morning tomorrow. If it's a gap down, if it's a gap up, that's going to be tough. I don't think that'll set up for a very good sell setup, but we'll just wait and see. Okay. So yeah, it looks like SPY is going to close down 0.37, and Q's actually made it to up 3 cents. So basically unchanged on the Q's. So a lot of movement, but I think probably not that damaging as far as the close. But I think what we got is the pattern. So that's the most important thing. We do have this hourly sell now. So we do have a good entry point to initiate a bearish bias. Right, at the very least, we'll have to lose our bullish bias on the trigger of that hourly sell. All right, hope you did well today. If not, we still have the rest of the week to make something out of. So we will talk to you tomorrow. All right, have a great evening, everyone.